In Australia, what is the most common type of business structure, if you want to divide it accordingly to individuals or people getting together? What would, if an individual starts, what's the most common from your experiences? Anyone?
Company.
Company structure.
In my legal practice, almost all business owners end up incorporating a company.
Even individuals who want to start a business.
And it's for non-tax purposes.
Right.
It all comes down to limitation of liability.
Right.
Under a company, as a shareholder, if the company's found to do something whereby a liability will arise in the court and they can be sued, the shareholders themselves won't be personally liable for any judgment that's awarded in favour of whoever's suing the company.
Right. Dishani, did you start as a company structure, or are you moving on to, or where do you start?
No, I started off as a limited liability. So
limited liability company.
Yes, limited liability company.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you do in relation to tax? If you don't want to tell me, that's all right. But did you get registered somewhere?
Yes, I did register the company.
Right.
I registered in such a way that I could diversify my business.
Right.
So it's not just the direct selling business that I do with Nutamedics and Herbalife. I also do different consultancy work for different companies and newspapers and stuff like that. So I had a question. How does the GST component actually apply to the direct selling business? Because there is no machinery and stuff like that that's needed. It's just probably a warehouse that's needed to store the goods, and of course the cash flow that needs to come in. But other than that, it's just absolutely direct selling business. And also how that applies to consultancy services as well.
You provide services and
yes.
just getting a payment, yeah.
So it's professional services basically.
Sure. Well, again, come back to the general rule without knowing the very specifics of the particular businesses that you're talking about. I'm not in a position to say whether it's definitively possible or not, but it's a general principle that I was describing before. So again, what it generally comes down to is, so long as everything that's provided or required to continue to operate that consultancy business or the direct marketing business, whatever it is, that might be the computers, the client lists, all that sort of stuff needs to be provided.
Right. And in relation to GST implications, how do you start, where do you go, when do you start paying GST? Is it compulsory?
Okay, the starting point is registration for GST. And the very first thing that you need to do once you go into business is get what's called an Australian business number, which is an ABN. As part of that process, you'll be asked whether you want to register for GST. The vast majority of businesses will need to register for GST.
Why is that?
Because
compulsion or?
Yes, well, the law requires any business with a turnover, so that's just sales, of $75,000 or more, must register for GST. A business with less than $75,000 a year of sales doesn't have to register, but because that's sales and not profit, we're talking about very, very small businesses at that point. So
can you just explain the difference again? GST is payable on profit or on sales?
On sales.
On sales.
Yes. So generally speaking, the GST in Australia is a very, very broad tax, and so it applies to almost everything. There are a handful of exceptions. So, for instance, fresh food. If you're selling fresh food, you don't have to charge GST and send this off to the tax office. But the vast majority of products you do. So your direct marketing, cosmetics, all of that GST.
Absolutely.
If you're starting off, you wouldn't be expecting, or especially like in Dishani's situation, she's working full-time, she's a full-time mum as well, and Dishani might think, look, I don't want to register for GST, but she'll get an income up to a certain level, and let's say it's under 50,000, she can just do it as it is without getting registered for GST?
Sorry, how much?
Just let's say 50,000 turnover.
50,000 turnover. If that's all the business income, then no, registration is not compulsory. However, there is a downside to that though. Businesses that are registered for GST are able to claim back any GST that they spend themselves in most situations. Right. So if you're not registered for GST, Granted, you don't have to charge GST to your customers, which might be an advantage for you because GST will add 10% to your prices, but your expenses will be higher because you'll generally be paying GST. Businesses that are registered in most situations will be allowed to get that GST back in what's called an input tax credit. I mentioned that before with respect to the going concerns. But if you are not registered for GST, you can't claim.
So what I see is it's anyway important or probably a useful decision to get yourself registered GST at the beginning rather than not. Is that a recommendation?
That when I was practicing as an accountant and advising small businesses, yes, the strong recommendation was register as a matter of course, especially if your turnover is going to be anywhere near the threshold of 75,000, because you might have some unexpected sales, for instance, which tips you over that, and then you're on a very short deadline to get registered at that point.
Simon, when you started your business, how did you get yourself arranged with the tax office? Anything specific, any useful information? I know given your background, you might already have had some information, but was there anything else?
I think with my background, I understood my limitations and I sought professional advice.
Anyway, right.
I understood I'm a solicitor, I work in commercial law and I do a lot of this stuff anyway, but tax is not my background.
Region. Yes.
And I think one of the most important things in business is to find the right advice and to take it.
All right, folks, we are coming to the end of our show. Let's summarize. Dishani, what do you have to say to conclude?
Just a very quick one. Just if you're moving house or if you have your house registered as a business address as well, make sure that you change it, because otherwise you end up paying a massive amount of penalties because you need to be paying on a quarterly basis. So seek a professional tax consultant and keep them informed so that you
of
will
your
not.
Address,
yes,
thereabouts.
yes, exactly. Otherwise, yeah.
Keith?
I'd probably want to point out as a concluding comment, when you're starting up a business, put some thought into the structure that you want to conduct the business through, because it can be expensive, including additional tax liabilities if you try and change structure down the track. But definitely seek advice in choosing a structure at the outset.
Simon, what have you got to say?
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I have to agree with everyone and seek advice from the outset. Two of your most important allies going into business will be your solicitor and your accountant. They've dealt with other people's businesses, 40, 50 hours a week, every week of their professional lives, and chances are if you don't have a problem, they've seen it before and they can head it off at the pass. That's all for today. Thank you, Dishani. Thank you,
Pleasure.
Keith, and thank you, Simon. Now, the information contained in this program is general in nature. You should not take this as specific advice that will suit your purposes. You must seek specific professional legal advice in relation to your matters. We've also got our episodes on our YouTube channel and also on our internet webpage, which is www.lawhelpaustralia.org. Thank you.